Every single judoka walking the face of planet Earth should be familiar with who Masahiko Kimura is. Mainly so that when their BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu buddies tell them, oh, that judo stuff doesn't work, they can remind them quite quickly, put them in check by asking them about the origin of the submission called a Kimura. Now, those of you who pay attention or study jiu-jitsu know the story behind why we call that specific arm lock or shoulder lock, really is what it is, why we call that submission a Kimura. It's named after the Japanese fighter Masahiko Kimura, who beat Helio Gracie in a submission only match. Now, that point, the Gracie family was already pretty legendary for their fighting prowess in the ring, and Kimura stepped in there, managed to throw Helio a number of times, but we weren't really counting throws because it's sub only, so eventually he got him pinned on the ground and managed to get him in what we now call a Kimura. Helio famously refused to tap, and Kimura broke Helio's arm, 2 different bones, and then the match was conceded. Now, in deference to Sensei Kimura, the Gracie family then started calling that specific submission Kimura, but this submission hold, probably has existed since man has existed and been fighting another man or woman, I suppose. But I'll explain what a Kimura is. In Japanese, technically it would be called Gyaku Ude Garami, which is a reverse Ude Garami. So imagine somebody's standing in front of you with their arm straight out, and then they bend their forearm down 90 degrees at the elbow. Then you reach across with your left hand, grab their right wrist that's down towards the ground. Grab their wrist with your left hand, reach over their tricep with your right hand behind their arm, and then loop your forearm through and grab your own wrist. So now you have basically your own hand on top of your left hand, which is on their right wrist. You can now apply pressure away from you with your left wrist and apply pressure towards you on their tricep with your forearm. And this puts all the sorts of pressure on the shoulder. Now, aside from that formal Japanese name, Gyaku Ude Garami, most people in judo are used to calling it either a key lock or a figure 4, because you're kind of making the figure 4 with your 2 arms and their arm, and then just that other term, key lock. So as just to explain what Ude Garami is, an Ude Garami would be if your opponent is standing in front of you, they stick their arm straight out from their side, and now they bend their arm 90 degrees, but their hands up, so it's as if they're motioning, stop to a car, an oncoming car or something. So now you would reach across with your right hand to grab their right wrist, then take your left hand, go behind their tricep again, loop it through, and again grab onto your own right wrist with your left wrist. Now again you push away from you with your right hand, and you crank pressure on their tricep with your left forearm. And again, this puts pressure on the shoulder joint. This is what a lot of people in jiu-jitsu will call an Americana. So in both forms of this Ude Garami, you have 2 hands on their 1 arm, and you're applying pressure. And all the pressure is going to go to the shoulder. You could eventually break their shoulder joint as well. So who is this Masahiko Kimura judo guy? Well, he was born in 1973, or sorry, he wasn't born in 1970. He's born in 1917 and passed away in 1993. He was quite basically a judo prodigy because he was able to earn his 4th degree black belt at the young age of 15, which is pretty unheard of. And then he advanced all the way to 5th degree black belt by 18. And my understanding is he did this by defeating higher ranking opponents than him at tournaments. This is something that in judo ranking we call batsugun. So it's normally in the judo ranking system, for every dan grade, the judoka is required to hold that grade for a minimum amount of time. So the shortest time, for example, between 1st degree black belt and 2nd degree black belt is 1 year. And then as the degrees advance, there's more and more time that you have to spend in each dan grade before you're even allowed to test to move up a degree. However, if you are a competitor and there's a certain designated what we call batsugun tournament, this is a tournament where there's no weight divisions and people compete against other people of the same rank. So doesn't matter how big they are or small they are. If they're the same rank, you get to compete against them, and depending on if you can beat people of higher rank and do that with significant gap, in other words, probably by ippon, and you can defeat more than a few opponents who are of higher rank, you will be batsugun, which means you automatically get promoted to the next dan without having to spend that time in grade, as we say. So apparently Masahiko Kimura was that good of a competitor that he could advance his dan grades simply through his fierce competitive success. Another piece of evidence that Kimura was an outstanding competitor is that he won what we call the All Japan Judo Championship 3 years in a row. Now, this is a unique championship that's still held to this day, but there are no weight classes whatsoever. So what happens is the whole country is basically divided up into all the way down to neighborhoods. So all the judoka in a specific neighborhood would compete. Whoever comes out on top advances out to the next level of competition, which might be for a small borough within the city. And then the winner from the borough advances to, the city level tournaments, and so on and so forth until you get to the national level. And so it's always quite something when a fighter who's not a heavyweight makes it up to even the semifinals or quarterfinals of this All Japan Judo Championship. This is very traditional because originally there were no weight divisions in judo tournaments, and so this is just a way of to hang on to that sort of tradition. But needless to say, it is not an easy tournament to win, and it's certainly not a tournament that's easy to three-peat at, since certainly after you've won one, there's plenty of film on you, and everybody's, as they say, going to be gunning for you the next year and the next year. Now, at that time, this was in 1937 through 1939 that Kimura won the All Japan Judo Championship. At this point, that was it. There were no World Championships. There was no Olympic Games for him to advance to. So this was the most prestigious judo tournament he could enter and win. Now, jump cut to 1949. That's when he had his famous match with Helio Gracie in, I believe it was Sao Paulo, Brazil. Now, following his competitive career, Sensei Kimura did go on to continue to coach at one of the Japanese universities, and he was known for his really rigorous training. Now, the best footage out there, which has been clipped and copied ad infinitum, is from a documentary made about a Japanese judoka named Doug Rogers. Doug Rogers, amazingly, at the age of 19, just decided he was going to move to Japan solely for the purpose of perfecting his judo game. And then he went on to capture a silver medal at the inaugural judo at the Olympics in 1964. So in addition to practicing at the Kodokan and practicing with the Tokyo police team, Doug Rogers did eventually make his way to work with Sensei Kimura. Following Doug's almost surprise win of that silver medal in 1964, the National Film Board of Canada decided to do a little documentary film on him. And you can find that on YouTube. It's about 20 minutes long, black and white. And I recommend highly that you watch the National Film Board full 20 minutes. It's quite an interesting little inside the life of Doug Rogers and his training under Sensei Kimura. It's narrated by Doug Rogers. I bring this National Film Board of Canada documentary on Doug Rogers to your attention because, again, you will see clips from that original documentary in every YouTuber's little piece about Sensei Kimura. There's also some black and white videos of Sensei Kimura demonstrating some of his favorite techniques, but of course that is narrated in Japanese. I also highly recommend that you take a look at that film clip because you will notice that Sensei Kimura uses his Gyaku Ude Garami in multiple ways, not simply as a submission on the ground. He uses it as a grip to maneuver his opponent to throw them. Now, one thing I've noticed or picked up on was if you look at clips of Karo Parisian and then look at this clip of Sensei Kimura, both of these judoka did pretty much the exact same move. I'm not sure if Karo was even aware that Kimura did this as well, but what they do is they take the Gyaku Ude Garami grip in a standing position and then use that to get leverage on their opponent and step in for what we call Asumi Gaeshi, which is a sacrifice throw, which means you kind of put yourself on your back and elevate one leg to flip your opponent over in kind of a somersault way, so then they're now on their back and you're on top of them. And then both Sensei Kimura and Karo Parisian then just crank that arm into a submission. It's a horrible, horrible shoulder crank. But it's an absolutely beautiful throw. So, if you check out Karo's highlights, I'm sure that'll be on it. But also check out Sensei Kimura's educational video. So there, I think I've made my point. I sure hope I made my point. So next time somebody like Chael Sonnen or anybody else says, well, judo doesn't work, it's like, you need to point out to them that that thing that you do called a Kimura was introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by a judo fighter, not by another Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter, by a judo practitioner, a judo champion named Masahiko Kimura. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. Please consider joining our membership forum. And if you like, leave a super thanks over on the right or head over to buymeacoffee.com/Hamaguchi-fight where you can purchase a coffee. Thank you so much for listening. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments.